As we head back to the future. On the WDW News Today
in T-minus 10 seconds and counting.
It's once again time to go back in time as we head back to the future on the WDW News Today podcast. Let's set our time coordinates for this week's trip through Disney Parks history with Professor Tom Corliss.
It's time to go back.
Where, Tom? Where?
Back to the future, Jason. That's right. It's time. It's time to travel through Disney Parks history, past attractions, current favorites, and play audio through Jason's headphones because we're a very professional operation here. Joining me for the segment, Pete Carney.
Steve Acco.
We're not talking about Pandora tonight.
All right. Hey, howdy, hey.
Ashley Jasmer.
Hey, y'all.
Nathan Hartman.
Greetings from the Sunshine State.
And Jason Diffendahl.
Hey, howdy, hey.
Who always says, hey, howdy, hey. So this week or this month, we are doing we're celebrating 10 years of Toy Story Midway Mania. Hard to believe. It's been 10 years as we all march closer to death.
Wow.
Getting a little dark on this show.
Very dark.
It is a dark ride. Anyway, hard to believe it has been a whole decade since Toy Story Midway Mania opened, so we figured a good way to celebrate 10 years is to talk about the history of that attraction and the space that it occupies in the Disney parks around the world. In order to do that, we are talking about some other past offerings at the parks, most of which were very short-lived, but nonetheless, they will be talked about in this segment. So who's ready to go back?
Let's go back.
Yes, who wants to be a time traveler? Play it.
Yep.
Yes. All right, we're going to go all the way back to 2001. Long before Pete had a shirt.
A little working towards my first one.
The year is 2001, and we're going to the Backstage Pass attraction at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Would continue to operate until that year when the budget cuts hit the park, in part due to the tourism industry slump caused by 9/11 at the time. The Backstage Pass attraction closed and began being cannibalized for other needs earlier in the year, however. The small theater area where the Backstage Pass guests exited was changed and became Walt Disney One Man's Dream later in the year. In April of that year, Soundstage 3 was open to the public in the form of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It. Backstage Pass would still somehow operate sporadically through this until it closed in February of 2002. So these were operating sound stages up until this point. And then around the turn of the new millennium, Disney decided to start using sound stages for attractions, and that's where Millionaire comes in. And obviously, Millionaire is this giant phenomenon at the time. ABC had Millionaire 5 nights a week at one point, believe it or not. Yes, in prime time, 5 nights a week. Can't imagine how people got tired of it. But it took them a little while to get the attraction rolling. It's sort of after the biggest cultural impact of the show, I would say. But nonetheless, it finally opened on April 7, 2001 at the Disney MGM Studios. I assume everybody in this segment watched Millionaire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I went to
the whole world
in New York pretty often.
You went to tapings?
Yeah. It was my dad's favorite show, so I had to take him.
Regis
you see-
tapings?
Regis.
It wasn't OG Regis. No, we get by the time I got tickets, and then we every time we went, we also tried out for the show. But my father loved it, so I think it was Meredith Vieira one time. Who else hosted? I don't remember Regis and Meredith. But there was some.
Yeah,
somebody else too. Yeah, but but it was a lot of fun. It was awesome.
I used to watch Regis in the 80s.
Yeah, not on Millionaire.
No, but
that was
he was old back then.
You know,
with Gilman and Kathy Lee Gifford.
Fun fact: I grew up 2 blocks away from the house Regis Philbin was born in the Bronx.
Huh.
I used to pass his house all the time.
Now, Regis's relationship with Disney was he doing parades for Christmas before Millionaire?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's what I thought. I mean,
that goes back to the 80s. Goes back to the 80s. And the relationship with ABC goes back, obviously, forever. Because Live was always on ABC networks, yeah. And so that's why he got asked to do Millionaire, because he was part of the ABC family. They figured he was good for it. So yeah,
he was also like America's dad for a while too, like especially with the parades and all the other specials. He just like made everyone, like all the wives, laugh. He made out, he was good for kids.
Everybody knew who he was. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone had a bad Regis impression. That was sort of.
You know what I mean?
Gelman. Yeah.
Gelman.
But if you've read Disney War, which is an excellent book about this era, they really do go into how massive of a deal Millionaire was for the corporation. It basically saved ABC, and made it in some ways viable for Disney to keep sort of chipping away at and pursuing. I mean, it was its first very huge, massive cultural hit. So.
Yeah.
And Slumdog Millionaire was a heck of a movie. Just putting it out there.
It's much later, though. So let's talk about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It a little bit. The Attractions Theater was a perfect replica of the television show, the same staging and everything. Sessions of the game ran several times a day. Each session was 25 minutes long, which they would do until the current contestant vacated the hot seat. And the theater seated 647 park guests. The multiple hosts that were used for the attraction were various Disney cast members who would try to emulate the U.S. primetime host, Regis Philbin, including his mannerisms in many cases. Many of them went on to do, many of them still with the company in many ways. A couple of them actually went on to do Idol years later. A couple of them were the judges at Idol. A couple of them are still around. The Disney Parks version of the game differed from the television show in several ways. First of all, contestants competed for points, not dollars. Contestant won a Disney collector pin for each point level he or she passed, minus any down to the previous milestone if he or she got a question wrong. We'll talk about the prizes a little later on. Every audience member had his or own A, B, C, or D keypad. The 10 contestant row seats were not special in fastest finger seats, not special in any way, other than a video display of what was going on, the camera work on the show. Access to these seats were chosen in a number of different ways before the show, including random selection, quizzing of guests in the queue, and special magic moment coupons dispensed from the attraction's Fast Pass dispensers, telling the bearer to present their Fast Pass to the attraction cast member for special seating. There were several times where just asking would also have granted you these seats as well. To begin a session, a fastest finger question was asked. The audience member who got the correct answer in the shortest amount of time sat in the hot seat first. The hot seat contestant had only 15 seconds to answer each of the first 5 questions, 100 to 1,000 points, 30 seconds for the next 5, 45 for the next 4, and 55 seconds for the final 1,000,000-point question. The real show internationally carried a variation of this format from 2008 to 2010. Each audience member could answer a question on his or her keypad at the same time as the hot seat contestant did, and contestants won points by pressing the correct button quickly. At the 1,000 and 32,000 point levels, the game was paused briefly to show the top 10 scores. And if the hot seat contestant got a question wrong or decided to walk away instead of an additional fastest finger question, the top scorer in the audience would take the place in the hot seat as long as there was time left. Typically, only 2 full games were played, again, depending on timing. The player with the highest score in the last game only won a congratulations from the host, if that. Yeah. My cousin did that once and was furious. Furious. He tried for many years to get in the hot seat. Many years. The 3 lifelines available were 50-50, ask the audience, and phone a complete stranger. Ask the audience would be immediate. The audience answers would be instantly pulled because the audience had already answered. Phone a complete stranger connected to the contestant to a cast member outside of the theater who would find a guest walking down the street to help. These were amazing.
They had me great.
I love these so much. They were always the most ridiculous people. They had no idea what was going on. Half the time they would grab a couple people who didn't speak English at first and have to move on. It was really fantastic.
They should have recorded just those. Like if I was a cast member on this, I would have recorded all of these.
Sadly, they didn't let people film. You were not allowed to film in Millionaire.
Why?
Did they reuse questions?
I think it decided maybe because of the contest aspect. I don't know, but they didn't allow filming. Regardless of that, someone who used to work here did film the final few shows, and they are on our YouTube channel. So if you've never seen Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It, they are filmed, and they're some of the few videos that exist of the show. You should check them out. Disney cast members were not permitted to participate because they work for the company and can't win prizes. Park guests playing as hot seat contestants were required to sign a waiver after completing their game. The waiver declared the fair market value of all prizes received in Walt Disney World by regulations set by the Florida Gaming Commission. An agreement that the guests would be ineligible to participate as a hot seat game player for a predetermined amount of time. 100 to 500,000 point winners had a 30-day blackout, while 1 million point winners also had the 30-day blackout and were also prohibited from winning the million-point prize again for a full year. Questions based on Disney parks and films often appeared at any point during the game, and usually because fastest finger first could be won by a younger audience member, randomly selected the correct one of the 24 possible orders and inputting it in a ridiculously small amount of time. The first 5 questions were usually easy enough that anyone in the audience could answer them correctly. Upon answering each question, the player received a collectible pin with the attraction's logo and the point value underneath. Jason, I think we have an image of one of the pins. Not that everyone on Earth doesn't have some of these at this point, but they're very common. You still find them on lanyards, a cast member lanyards sometimes. I actually have the whole set up to 250,000. I don't have past that though. I still need those last 2. If anyone out there wants to sell Tom Corliss your 500,000 or million point pins, let me know. Yes. Also, various other prizes were awarded at each milestone question, and we'll go over those real quick. For the 1,000 points, which would mean you answer the first 5 questions correctly, you got a lanyard, the pins for 100 through 1,000 points, and a 1,000 point baseball cap. For 10 questions correct, that's 32,000 points, you would get the lanyard, all the pins, the baseball cap, and a 32,000 point embroidered shirt. And finally, for 1,000,000 points, you would get the Play It lanyard, all the pins, the baseball cap, the shirt, the 1,000,000 point leather jacket, the 1,000,000 point medallion, and depending on when you went, more often than not, it was a Disney Cruise Line vacation for 4 as the grand prize. In early days of the attraction, guests would also receive a copy of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire CD-ROM game.
Oh, I had that.
If they got to 32,000. Who didn't? I mean, that was so much fun.
You could get that. I think you could get it in a cereal box at one point. I can't remember.
No. Yeah, you could.
Something like that, yeah.
There was like a trial version at least, yeah. During the original television run of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, contestants would receive a trip for 2 to New York City to see a taping of the game when correctly answering a 1,000,000 question in lieu of the cruise. That seems fair. During Disney's Hollywood Studios Star Wars weekends, the first 2 games of the day featured questions based on Star Wars films and began with Greedo in the hot seat answering questions in his alien language. The lifelines in Star Wars weekends games of the game worked exactly the same, but were named 50-50, Ask the Jedi Council, and Phone a Stormtrooper. See, even back then they were overlaying everything.
Did it have like 6 pre-programmed responses and that was it? What would the stormtrooper say? That's what I want to know.
I think it still was just someone outside. It just had a different name. You still phoned a stranger, but they wanted a cutesy name.
Fair enough.
During ESPN The Weekend, also based at the studios, play consisted of sports trivia questions. Contestants got to team up with ESPN personalities and sports figures. For this edition of the game, the Phone a Complete Stranger Lifeline was replaced with a chance to ask an ESPN expert, which would be Howie Schwab or the Sklar twins in many cases, for assistance. Anyone remember Stump the Schwab? That was a show back in the day. Great show. On several occasions over 3 years, the attraction also hosted tapings of the syndicated television show for later broadcast. The attraction proved so popular in its opening year that it was rushed into production quickly to help fix Disney's California Adventure Park. It opened there on September 14th, 2001, but it only lasted until August 20th, 2004, because nothing worked in early DCA. It did get to continue on for a bit at Hollywood Studios, as we'll talk about. Look at this. So this, fun fact, this building didn't exist when the park opened in February of 2001. They very quickly rushed this building up. They were so worried that they thought this was going to save the park. And yes,
save the network. Why not try and save the park?
Yeah. And yes, Hollywood Pictures backlot used to look even worse than it does now. You can see that there. That Muppet building was something.
Rizzo always had some kind of store. Now it's a pizza place. He used to have a prop shop. The guy's an
now
entrepreneur.
they're all closed. He's a bad entrepreneur.
He's a seasonal guy. He's on vacation.
He's a snowbird.
He's a snow rat.
He goes back to New York when it's cold. He's doing it wrong.
Doing it all wrong.
Yeah. All right, so let's go over to California Adventure. Well, we're in California Adventure now. We just talked about Millionaire. But let's go to the back of the park and let's talk about Malaburitos.
What?
Jason, do we have
Why?
the image of Malaburitos? There it is. Look at how beautiful this park was. Maybe Pixar Pier is actually an improvement. Holy free holy, Viva Tortilla, it's Malaburitos, because you can't beat these burritos, as the sign says.
I mean, that's a good sign.
It's a great
It
slogan.
is.
Frioli
That's
is.
amazing.
Wow. So Malaburitos opened on February 8, 2001 is one of the many eateries in California Adventure. As was the case with several of the park's shops, restaurants, and rides, the name was a play on a California location name. In this case, Malibu, a Southern California city that stretches for 21 miles across the Pacific coast. Other examples of the park on opening day, they were many, many, many. Just a few: Manhattan Beach, Bakersfield Bakery, Burbank Ice Cream, and the Maliboomer. Yet another reference to Malibu just feet away from this.
And don't forget Pizza Mau Mau.
Yes, there were so many of these, in fact, that a couple years ago on WDW News Tonight, we played a game,
Yes.
opening day California Adventure or stuff Tom made up. And one of the ones we made up, the only one I remember, I think, is that we made up was Candlestick Pork.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I was very proud. I was very proud. Of
Holy free holy, that is good.
Anyway, technically, Malaburitos lasted until, and Jason, I think there's a couple more images of Malaburitos, the menu and such, maybe. Lasted until September 2006 when the construction walls went up for Toy Story Midway Mania. In reality, Malaburitos closed in 2001 as soon as it became apparent to park management that there were too few guests and too many places to eat. So Malaburitos opened for business February 8, 2001. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It opened on February 18, 2001. For whatever reason, opened 10 days after the opening of the park. But it may have not opened very much after that. There is no photographic proof or evidence. No one will vouch for the fact that Malaburitos ever reopened. So it is believed that it opened in 2001, operated for a bit, and actually never reopened. Believe it or not, though, the menu board was still updated over the years. So anytime soft drink prices went up during the park, they changed the menu boards on the off chance that they would reopen Malaburitos.
What?
Wow.
So they opened it and then they closed it, but we don't know exactly when it closed. It just quietly went away.
Well, see, back then there was no site reporting daily
fair
on
enough.
parks. So it's a little different back then.
Like I feel especially
You mean we don't have video of the last day of Burritos?
I was not the last burrito. No, I'm sorry.
Well,
Well, the other problem was that no one was at the park to get Malibu burritos anyways at that point.
That's
so
true.
That's
So
true.
that's
Like
what
I feel like they were just trying to confuse people by keeping to update the sign. Like it almost becomes an urban legend that it opens from time to time.
Well, I think they whoever was printing signs, like that was just still listed as a location, I guess. If they ever crossed a certain attendance mark, it would have reopened, I think. It just, the park never did.
Not
That
even
says a
like
lot.
on Christmas
Wow.
Day or anything.
No, I guess it never reached the point where they felt they needed to reopen it.
Well, they also didn't have the ingredients, probably. It's like, oh, the attendance is over that mark. Oh, but we don't have any burritos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
I
what
don't
did they
think-
do?
Yeah, and I don't think there was another place in the park that had burritos either. So
Hmm.
unless maybe Rancho at Disneyland might have been serving burritos
yeah.
back then. So it might have just been the same stuff. A few steps away, though, was Pacific Ocean Photos, which opened with the park as well. The studio and film store had two unassuming entrances in the simple stucco building that housed the two fast food restaurants. This is real, by the way. Can we take a look at this for a moment? This is
Oh, it's
unbelievable.
so sad.
Yeah, I never saw this DCA. The DCA I saw, the new things that had opened was they had started fixing the pier when I went. They were peeling the orange stinger as I arrived. I never saw this. This is bad.
I
Even-
saw parts of this.
Why,
Yeah?
why do you think it's
Orange
bad?
Stinger was still there, but Toy Story existed.
Pete, I want you to now ask me that question again looking at this photo.
It was bad.
All right,
It
but
was really
if they're
bad.
trying to recreate, I mean, never mind, because they're not trying. I was going to say it looks like old school Coney Island, but this is West Coast. It
But
looks
see,
like
that
bowling
was-
pin, like the bottom of the columns.
Exactly,
Looks like your
but that
typical
was-
bowling
Yeah, like
it's
it's
Yeah.
I can see where they were going. Like it's slightly like
Oh my
a very
God.
cartoony version
look,
of
there's
like
Nathan.
Santa Monica.
There's Nathan's at your
That's
local mall
definitely
food
from
court.
Coney Island when it says strips, dips, and chips.
Oh, we'll get there.
That looks exactly like in coming full circle, Malibu burritos and whatever that is, like the exact size of what Woody's Lunchbox is now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, the park had an identity crisis. It was like, oh, it's like it's a pier, an old pier, but everything was very modern stucco garbage.
It's
So there was no attempt to produce
It's very
something,
Atlantic City-esque.
they
but
went
like
to,
modern day Atlantic City.
they went to
Yeah, a
Santa
little
Monica
bit.
on drugs. They went to Santa Monica and Coney Island on drugs.
No,
that's
not
the
on
only
drugs, just without a
explanation.
budget.
It's just bright. It's bright colors and cheap material. I mean, like you said, I mean, this is not during one of the brightest times. They couldn't even get people into the parks. So it's
Can we give an ode though to the fact that the Pacific Ocean photos? Like, why don't we talk about how there's still so many like Photoshop areas in Disney, and almost absolutely no need in comparison to what it used to be.
Yeah.
It's
true.
these are like
Well, they're
some of the
third
last-
party now. I think that's why they still exist. Otherwise, I think Disney has given up on this. But this used to be a really common thing back in the day, even
Mhm.
going back a long time ago when I was a kid. I remember doing the photo thing at Pirates of the Caribbean, which you could do at the exit where, they do the family photo with everybody in pirate clothes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, look at that green screen.
which was the coolest.
You can pretend
Mhm.
there's theming in the park. Look at that. That's a wall.
Well, there was theming. It just wasn't good theming.
It was
Green screen
still
you in
so
with
expensive
Superstar
back
Limo
then.
or Whoopi.
So Pacific Ocean Photos closed to make way for Midway Mania as well. In September 2006, workers put up the construction walls there, and by Thanksgiving 2006, the building was gone.
Wow.
The name of the studio, Pacific Ocean Photos, was undoubtedly a play on Pacific Ocean Park in Santa Monica. Built by a partnership of broadcaster CBS and racetrack operator Santa Anita Park, the ambitious amusement pier called POP for short was supposed to compete with Disneyland, but it only lasted from 1958 through 1967. Also nearby was Strips, Dips, and Chips, the one that stayed open. Unlike Maliburitos, which closed in the park's first year, Strips, Dips, and Chips operated for more than 5, although not every day. Of course not. Boardwalk, Betsy's, Strips, Dips, and Chips didn't make it. What does it say? The best bet by the beach? Oh, because
I
it's
can't-
Bets, because her name's Betsy. Yeah, I get it.
Um,
Very clever. In September 2006, the construction wall went up here as well, and this whole building went. But as soon as Strips, Dips, and Chips closed, its popular deep fried menu moved to Bountiful Valley Farmers Market. What better way to emphasize fresh, healthy foods than with all this fried stuff? So Farmers Market opened with a healthy menu originally. All this fried stuff moved there, but that didn't last long either because the Farmers Market closed on September 7th, 2010 for the demolition of Bountiful Valley Farm. Look it up, kids. Bountiful Valley Farm. Sort of half of a Bug's Land, kind of, that was sacrificed for Cars Land.
Yeah, if you've ever been to a farm at a zoo, that, but less.
I do miss Sam Andreas shakes. Sam Andreas shakes are great. Although they moved to Flo's. Flo's still has those same shakes.
I love Flo's.
Flo's the best. All right, so let's talk about Toy Story Midway Mania. The story of Toy Story Midway Mania goes way back to the year 2005 with the 50th anniversary celebration of Disneyland, the happiest homecoming on Earth. At that time, Imagineers Kevin Rafferty, writer and director, and Robert Coltrane, concept designer, were working on Radiator Springs Racers. As part of the festivities, Rafferty and Coltrane got to ride the brand new Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters at Disneyland. Both enjoyed the new attraction and agreed that something like Astro Blasters was needed for California Adventure as they were looking for something more to add beyond the upcoming Car Land. And no, I'm not saying Cars Land incorrectly. Originally, it was Car Land. The reasoning for that was Radiator Springs Racers was always part of the plan. It was always the e-ticket, but the rest of the land was a celebration of California's car culture and other famous Disney automobiles. So Herbie the Love Bug was there. There was a Goofy About Driving attraction. There was a lot of weird stuff. There was like a 60s diner, which basically became Flo's.
Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Drive-in movie theater, sit-down restaurant. All that kind of stuff. When they bought Pixar, Lasseter suggested that the land just be from Cars, the movie. And everyone agreed, and so it became Cars Land. But this point in time, Car Land.
So is Radiator Springs Raceway, I mean, obviously it wasn't called that until the movie Cars came out.
No, so the ride, the e-ticket was always based on the movie Cars, even though it was in development before the movie came out.
I got you.
That attraction was always part of Carland. So there was a singular Cars attraction.
They got that kind of budget for a movie that didn't even come out yet?
Yeah, and the fun thing is a Cars attraction even opened before the movie came out. The Cars Race Rally attraction in Paris opened before the movie.
That's sort of like the worst ride in Animal Kingdom. It's Tough to Be a Bug came out before that movie.
Yeah, they were still doing that at that time.
And that's such a massive budget in comparison to like what you were talking about being what it like put a Herbie out and basically rip off the drive-in at Hollywood Studios. It's a way bigger project. But then again, I guess they knew at that point the success of Cars. So
well, I think the other thing is they knew the success of Test Track.
Yes.
Rocket Rods had already flopped. Rocket Rods was dead, and they knew they still should do something with that ride system. And so a racing ride just seemed like the right idea. So whether it was Cars or not, I think that was always the plan.
Like, you think if the movie had Tank, they probably would have just rethemed it and kept everything the same? No, you don't think they still would have done it?
I think it was too far along in development. So I don't think it mattered. I think that attraction was going to happen anyway.
I mean, think about it. A Bug's Land is how many years old, and it just shut down this year at DCA. And that movie, most kids nowadays, I mean, unless they're rewatching the old movies, that was
that's just them being cheap. So.
Yeah.
It's always a risk.
Also very true.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get back to Midway Mania now. I sidetracked this. So both of them enjoyed the attraction. They thought something like that should be in DCA. Kevin and Robert liked the idea of perhaps a more interactive version of the attraction and kept working on developing that idea. One day, as they were walking around the Paradise Pier area, one of the Midway games inspired the two to think of an idea for an attraction. The basic premise was to create an attraction that was interactive and had a lot of replay value. This brought the Imagineers back to an older attraction from Disney Quest called Pirates of the Caribbean: Battle for Buccaneer Gold, where guests shot toy cannons at interactive screens simulating a ship battle on the sea. They liked the idea of being able to shoot virtual cannonballs and sink ships, and the ability to see the tracing of the cannonball shots got them thinking, what if they took the idea but substituted other items for cannonballs? The shooting device from Pirates of the Caribbean was an aspect that Imagineers decided they would absolutely need to include in the endeavor. They liked these a lot, but they just weren't sure what was going to happen beyond that. But the first thing they decided on was we're doing screens, and we're definitely using these cannons from Battle for Buccaneer Gold.
Wow. I don't know.
I thought Jason loves Disney Quest. I was expecting Jason to rant for 20 minutes about Battle for Buccaneer Gold.
I'm actually, to be completely honest, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how they transformed Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Buccaneer Gold into Toy Story Midway Mania, because I never, ever would have made the connection between those two.
Really? They both have the pull string cannon.
Yeah, but Battle for Buccaneer Gold is like a 270-degree interactive experience with 4 people playing together on a team. You have to run back and forth. You're not sitting there looking at the screen. You're actually moving around. You're trying to work together to beat the pirates, not compete against each other.
But also, that's a much
video
longer
game
interactive experience. This is a ride where you need to keep in mind of capacity. And
I'm not saying that. I agree. I understand all that, but I'm just saying, like, I other than the pull string cannons and the fact that you're on a screen and it's 3D, there's no other resemblance between those two things.
Correct. I mean, that's literally what I just said. They like the cannons.
So we can all agree.
Tom, that's what commentary is. We just rework what you say.
Yep.
But he's like arguing my point, which my point was only that they really like the cannons.
Yeah, I like the cannons too. When you're shooting pirates and working together with other people.
Can you pull that art back up? You had some interesting art showing just now, and I want to talk about it because we're kind of on this topic.
The pencil sketch concept art?
Yeah, give me the pencil sketch.
There you go.
So when they're making these original plans for this area, they had not yet landed upon 1930s Boardwalk as the re-theme of Paradise Pier.
That's the first re-theme of Paradise Pier.
Yeah, so at this point, they're thinking we're going to go character heavy. So this is
familiar, by the way.
This is the original. Yeah, right. We'll get there. This is the original thought for Midway Mania's entrance area. A lot of big characters, a lot of color, and then so this goes beyond this. Jason, there's another pencil sketch piece, I believe. They were going to retheme most of Paradise Pier to Toy Story stuff at one point. And then at a later point, it was other Disney stuff. Like this ride in particular was a Pinocchio ride at one point because of the strings, the idea that they're puppet strings. This is obviously Silly Symphony Swing's Orange Stinger. You can even see the bottom of the base at this point is still the shape of Orange Stinger. And they were going to keep the top piece too. It was going to be the claw from Toy Story. So that was what was originally in the plans for Paradise Pier. Obviously, that doesn't happen, but we'll continue our story. Well, it doesn't happen at least at that time. The final piece in constructing the new idea for an attraction was to figure out what goes really good with games. Very quickly, the characters from the Toy Story films by Pixar came to mind, and very quickly, development of the idea began. According to Robert Coltrane, they began developing the idea in August of 2005, and by September, they had shown creative management artwork for the new attraction. Disney CEO Bob Iger liked the idea so much that it was immediately greenlit. And after showing Iger, I guess Iger was starting to take the reins at this point, I guess, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so
Iger was around before CEO. He was the number
When
two.
did Iger actually?
So it was 2004 when the whole Save Disney thing happened with them trying to get rid of Eisner. So Iger took over right around 2005. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think this might have been even the first thing he greenlit, actually. So after showing Iger, the head of Pixar, John Lasseter, was shown the idea and he loved it. And with that, Toy Story Mania was the fastest attraction ever from original concept to completion in the history of Walt Disney Imagineering. That's how quickly it got approved and they started work on it. The original idea for the attraction was, quote unquote, traditional Midway games that you can ride through, hosted by Toy Story characters. The attraction was comprised of a number of different Midway games that featured Toy Story characters, obviously. In the original concept, there was a Midway game where guests would shoot baseballs at various Mr. Potato Heads in a knockover game. Ultimately, this idea wasn't used as they deemed it wasn't a good idea to throw things at characters. Decided that was in poor taste.
You were right about Iger, by the way. It was 05.
Okay. I think he actually took over in September. I think it was actually that month.
He was president and COO in 2000, and then March 13th, 05, he was announced as CEO.
Yeah, but I think he actually started the job. Yeah, I think Eisner left in September.
That would make sense because that would be 6 months after he was named.
Yeah. A practice round would be the first stop where guests could get acclimated to the ride, and then the ride would progress to the ham and egg scene, which was one of the first concepts that Robert and Kevin came up with, and it actually stayed through to the final finished attraction. There you see the original concept art. So they were still so early in development by the time all this got announced in 2007 that some of this art's pretty different from what happened. Although the basic idea there is still looks about the same. Where are we? So we're moving on from ham and eggs. The next scene was Bo Peep's Balloon Pop, get it? Which did make the final cut, followed by Sarge's Shoot Out the Stars Green Army Men Camp, which did not make the final cut. So Shoot Out the Stars, in case you've never been to a carnival before.
I'm sorry if you've never been to a carnival before.
Yeah, but I guess they're not common at carnivals anymore either because the gun aspect.
The whole gun aspect. But they used to be everywhere in the 80s and 90s.
They used to be, yeah.
Yeah,
they're
so
still here.
Yeah, you shoot well, you live in the South.
People bring their own guns to the carnival.
There goes all the Southern viewers. You shoot.
Fair point.
There's a star on a piece of paper, and the idea is to shoot a perfect cutout of the star so it falls through. I guess they decided let's not do that, so that didn't make it. The next scene was the Green Men Flying Tossers game, and then Slinkys Bonanza, where dog bones are shot out, and Slinky, who's attached to a spring, tries to catch the bones guests shoot into bowls. Another idea for a game was Rex's Dino Dash, which was based on those games where players shoot water at a target to get the character to move across a map. In the game, players would shoot lava into the designated volcano, which would move their Rex player across the map in an effort to get Rex to safety before the meteor hits. Another game was the Backyard Beach Ball Bash, where guests launch beach balls into targets in a pool, and this game gave rise to the idea of a 4D attraction, where as you hit the water with your beach balls, water would splash at the player. Kids, I want you to think back to a time where the water effects worked on Toy Story Midway Mania. They used to. The final scene would be Woody's Rootin' Tootin' Shootin' Gallery, which ended up staying. And the original ending had guests. This is where you'd run into the animatronic Mr. Potato Head, where he'd tally your score and tell you what you won. That eventually would be moved to the queue. In Florida, and in California, he would instead be outside. Oh, look at that. There he is in his old spot at Walt Disney World. He's back now. You can see him again.
That's true.
So
voiced by the late, great Don Rickles, of course. The good news was executives at Disney loved the idea, and now Imagineers had to figure out how to actually implement it. The first thing Imagineers did was go to the Los Angeles County Fair to play some games. Some of the Midway games that they would emulate for the attraction. For the ride vehicle, the ride vehicles already in development for Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek in Tokyo seemed like a good fit. So what you're looking at now, these are exactly the same shape as the Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek vehicles for Tokyo. That was in development. They were like, oh, let's just use that instead of the flashlights. We will mount the spring action shooters up there. And there you see they returned to a game. Very, very early version when they, I guess this is when they rendered the attraction in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3. Looks just like it.
Wow.
There were a number of problems with this design. There's a lot of problems here. Number one, capacity. They were not happy with the capacity. They didn't care that Tokyo wanted this. They're like, let them have these vehicles. We need something with more capacity. That's when they came up with the double vehicles. The other big problem they realized, if we can go back to the other ones, was the height of players. By having a stationary mounted gun, if you're a short person or a child, you're going to have to reach farther to reach the gun. If you're taller, they didn't like this idea of the gun not being exactly where the player would want it. So we'll get to how that changes later. But so they decided they designed the two-sided spinning vehicle instead for higher capacity and also for a different gun layout. The next question was where to place this new attraction. The initial idea was to place it near California Screamin' in one of two designated expansion plots. First, they looked at the one on the left side. So there's that big circle in the middle of the track. They looked towards there. Then more likely was the right side, kind of where Maliboomer was. But then somebody said, why don't we build it underneath California Screamin'? So the idea suddenly became, can we build it underneath California Screamin'? So Robert took the idea home at Kevin's suggestion and came back with the mock-up of how it could be done. They had to remove a couple of steel support beams, but it absolutely could work. The architect helped create a mock-up for a turn-of-the-century seaside attraction for Paradise Pier. This is around the time that the theme had changed to this Victorian-style boardwalk. Meanwhile, Imagineers thought so much of the idea that they wanted to bring it also to the Disney MGM studios, which is a unique idea considering that cloning attractions at the same time was not something they often did. Building things sort of at the same time had been done before, but we're going way back to, you're talking Haunted Mansion, which of course opened at Disneyland in 1969, but they were already building stuff simultaneously for the Florida version, which would open in 1971. There's also the Country Bear Jamboree, which was very quickly tacked on for Disneyland the next year after it opened in Florida, but never before simultaneously designed and constructed absolutely at the exact same time, on the same timeline to open at the same time. Never been done before.
Especially because they didn't know if it was going to work right. This was brand new technology.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of a gamble because it was brand new technology. I mean, it was based on Monsters Inc. But it was
completely different from Monsters. This thing runs on way more servers than Monsters.
I was going to say, I think that, and it's also three different things running at the same time. I think it's the track vehicle, the scoring, and
everything's got to talk to each other.
And then the actual ride itself. Yeah, this
may seem like a thing that every park should be able to do now. In 2008, this was not. This was a very complicated thing at the time, and Toy Story Mania may not age well because maybe all of this is very common now, but Toy Story kind of led the way for a lot of these kind of things.
And they spent a ton more money than people would now. I think they put something like $80 million into this, which nowadays, like just computers and screens with some vehicles that rotate.
Well, based on what Imagineering charges for attractions, it probably cost them $200 million now. But that's a whole nother story. So they were aiming for a similar opening date, never been done before. For Hollywood Studios, Imagineers came up with the idea of Pixar Studios inside of Hollywood Studios. Luckily, the attraction would fit nearly perfectly into one of the existing sound stages. Unfortunately for Who Wants to Be a Billionaire, it was that sound stage. Some designs were needed for the front facade, and John Lasseter had the idea to make it look like the front of the Pixar Studios building, and Imagineers went to Pixar to get an idea of what to make. The concept for the area surrounding the attraction was to have the studio, but still be rooted somewhat in fantasy, which is what John wanted. So the story was let the toys spill out onto the street. So like the toys have taken over Pixar Studios, which is one of the more nonsensical themes probably ever. But it was I think a really pleasant street. I like Pixar Place. I thought it was very pretty. It fit really well into Hollywood Studios. Story-wise, maybe not the most sensible thing, but it was a real pleasant area.
I would agree in most of that. I think, the fact that you could walk down Pixar Place and feel like you're in Emeryville was really neat, and it did fit among the sound stages where you felt like you were walking onto a set or onto a sound stage. I liked the transition because it started to tell you the story of, look at all this stuff from your childhood. Oh my God, that's a barrel of monkeys. Like this, oh, that's the size of a kite. And then you get onto this game, and then you're having fun. You're a kid all over again. So I kind of like how because you feel like you're on a set or a sound stage, you got to start telling the story that you're going to go have fun and play games as if you're a child. So I kind of liked that front facade, and that when you walk in was all the stuff from your childhood.
Yeah, I remember being really happy with the Luxo lamp as well. For the wasn't there very long, long enough to get sued, but.
Yeah, but, now it's going over the opening of Pixar Pier, so
yeah. So there you go. But I mean, there was a
Luxo.
Yeah, it was like that. There was a bit of the Emeryville, and there was a little of that stuff, and just a little bit of the magic that like the Luxo lamp brought in. It really made a rather, especially now when you think about it, and its final sort of iteration before the whole move. It's a really small sort of area, and they made it feel pretty lively and full of stuff. While now it feels pretty empty, especially right now. But.
Yeah. Well, now it's going to be
it's Monstropolis.
Yeah. Monstropolis, Metroville.
Winner Metroville.
You do know that Monstropolis is not the city in Incredibles, right?
Whatever.
That's the Pixar theory.
That's right. Just mix them up all the time.
They're all in the snow globe anyway from China.
Oh boy. Development of the attraction continued with the idea that guests were at a carnival and the Toy Story characters would be operating the various booths. But one day there was a breakthrough because there was a story issue where in the film, when humans are around, the toys don't come to life. So the idea was proposed to instead have the humans be shrunken down to the size of a toy and let guests come to the toy world. The new storyline revolved around Andy getting a new Midway playset for his birthday, and while Andy was downstairs eating dinner, all the toys came to life to play with this new set. A decision was also made, the timeline of the Toy Story films where this should exist. Since the Toy Story 2 characters were wanted to be a part of the attraction, the ride takes place after the events of the first two Toy Story films. This, of course, changes later when we get to Toy Story Land, where who cares about timelines? Doesn't matter. Bonnie doesn't exist. Andy took the toys back. Like everything's thrown.
It's fine.
Sure.
Andy got a job at Pixar Place. He's interning.
The design of the Toy Story attraction was based around the toy that Andy has received for his birthday, that Midway Mania playset. Imagineer Laurie Coltrane, senior show producer and director, used the toy idea to develop the look for the trams, the shooters, the backdrops, and other elements of the look of the attraction. Laurie even went as far as to design the Toy Story characters to look like they could have been sold separately as an add-on to the playset to match the set, as seen with Mr. Potato Head, although in the end, he's the only character that they ended up using the Midway Mania version of. So everybody else appears in their normal attire and such. And Jason, if we could switch back to Mr. Potato Head, that's not a good picture because he's just wearing special shoes there. There we go. There he is in his Barker outfit. So they were originally going to have all of them have a Midway Mania version that was sold separately. Yeah. Along the lines of the storyline, Imagineers decided that the toys would pair up with their best friend and host their favorite game while the guests play the games in the role of the other toys. In terms of art direction, Imagineer Laurie Coltrane chose to incorporate a lot of the elements from the first two Toy Story films, such as details from Andy's room. In addition, they incorporated toys that were the same era as the toys featured in the film. So this included popular toys of the 60s and 70s for the most part. While you don't find more contemporary toys around the attraction. Imagineers also created some artwork to help fill in the gaps of various other areas of the attraction, from various pictures drawn by their kids to other toys that might have existed at the time, maybe even some carnival or circus-themed area art, paint by numbers, all sorts of stuff like that. In Hollywood Studios, to get into the world of the toys from a design and story standpoint, the marquee at the entrance to the ride is made up of toys, and as you pass under the marquee, you are instantly shrunken to the size of a toy. Still never figured out how to transition you to the size of a toy. It just instantly happens. Although I still like to, as I make that turn down to Toy Story Land, I like to loudly scream that I'm shrinking until I cross over that little piece of pavement that marks the start of Toy Story Land, and then I yell.
If they would have kept the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Land or attraction, it could have all worked together.
But that was a movie set, so it made sense.
Could have all worked.
Well, if only they had a large microscope lying around somewhere.
For whatever reason, they really, really dislike movie set theming. They have decided, someone at Imagineering's like, we are never doing movie set theming again.
Why?
And so we'd rather just not explain anything. I don't know why. They hate it. They are going out of their way to rip every remaining nod to working movie studio.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, that's the whole thing, is that they're taking it in a different direction now anyway. It used to be a working studio and you go on tours and see movie sets and everything else. This is not Hollywood studios of the 80s and 90s anymore.
But why can't entering a movie set work as the transition?
Right. Like why? That helps it make sense. And even though it's not a working studio anymore, at least it being a studio gives it a cohesive theme.
As opposed to somehow I walk under rockwork from the planet of Batu and I'm suddenly in Andy's backyard. Yet I can.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But I think that
from
used
Andy's
to be
backyard.
The theming was when you went to MGM or now Hollywood Studios. It was you knew you were going to movie sets. You knew you were going to Hollywood stuff. Now it's not like that. It's immersion everywhere. So now you're going into this land. You're going into Batu. Then you're going into
But to a certain point, that's silly.
It's a
unthemed Tatooine traders. The unthemed Muppet store.
It's a mess over there. Don't get me wrong.
When you've got immersion, you don't need transition.
I would disagree with that. If it were one cohesive immersion, yeah. But like Tom said, you can't go from Star Wars to Toy Story. That's jarring. That's not even close to the same thing.
If we were doing this segment a year ago, I would probably join in the apologist line of thought of, okay, yeah, all right. But let's think for a second. Let's think about the land transitions in Magic Kingdom. They're perfect. Those land transitions, maybe not Tomorrowland, Fantasyland,
because
but the rest of them.
Because they were designed and built in 1970.
No, because they were designed to work together.
That's a good point, because the cohesive structure was there to begin with. You're looking at an entire park created for a completely different reason, now being retrofitted for another reason. I don't disagree that the transitions don't work, but I would also say I'm not sure how, without some real like creativity, and in some areas they do better than others, it would be very difficult to take some of these areas and retrofit them to.
But like at Disneyland, you've got this beautiful transition they're doing from Frontierland, and they've even kind of designed Batu to reflect some from a distance. Some of it reflects what you might see,
like the rock work.
Yeah, and so it works. And then for Hollywood Studios, they're like, all right, LA Road Tunnel.
Well, I think that's a point I think Nathan was making, is that they're retrofitting it. I mean, in other areas, I mean, they still know how to do it. I mean, Pandora, I think, is beautiful. When you walk over the bridge, the music, you slowly start to hear it creep up on you, and you then all of a sudden, boom, you're in Pandora.
Sometimes they care.
But again, over Hollywood Studios, like Nathan was saying, is that you're just retrofitting it in. So it's like, oh, you're gonna cross over. Hey, you're in Toy Story Land, or let's go through this tunnel. Oh my God, I'm in Batu. This is wild. I'm just in LA.
But as much as people want to knock like Eisner era, let's examine things for a moment. Like, let's think about Everest, brilliant beautiful transition area. Let's think about Pixar Place. Makes sense. Good.
Absolutely.
Fits the story. You made the attraction work. Okay.
No, it's. I mean,
we have entered a period of laziness.
We've
absolutely
or cheapness, or both.
In this case, I don't know cheapness, because nothing about Star Wars is necessarily cheap. It was like, let's design Batu for Disneyland, and no one gives a crap about Hollywood Studios, which is really unfair. But it is what it is. But I don't think it doesn't. Nothing has to be anyway. If you learn anything, here's the thing. And I hate to go. We always end up going down this road, and you will all go down this road once you go there. But we're going to talk about Disney Sea for a second.
Yay! Drink, everyone, drink.
Yeah, because you have to. Because like you listen to people for years, and you finally go, and you're like, oh my God, everyone's right.
Yeah.
That's you've given a third party company that's licensing your parks. They have a better understanding and more willingness to do what you used to do than you do currently. And that's the difference. And like, even we're going to talk about it even for Toy Story Mania. In a couple moments, we'll talk about how they took Toy Story Mania, which isn't like this thing that makes a whole lot of sense in that park, but they did this beautiful job with it. And then even this week, they started unveiling pieces of the Soarin' facade, and it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful Soarin' ever built. So it's about care, and domestic management doesn't care.
I think
it's a lot of the
problem.
I think a more closer example that might hurt a little bit more is the fact that definitely with a cheaper budget, or maybe close, but probably say cheaper, Universal's transition at Universal Studios, in the sense of being a park that is, you are writing the movies. That's the whole concept. Their transition from London to Diagon Alley is really, really well done, and it fits with it doesn't feel like you're having issues going from movies.
Wasn't that made by Disney Imagineers who were laid off though?
Yeah, but it's also made by people who care. It's not even just about you working for Disney or caring. It's literally when you care, and we've seen when Universal doesn't care.
Yes.
Fast and the Furious Supercharged and Fallon and
Fast and the Furious.
So when they're forced, like Nintendo likely and like Potter has been thus far, when they're forced and when someone cares, it can be done. And that's the bottom line is someone has to care.
It's not a budgetary thing. These transitions can be done. It just takes.
It takes more time and effort and thought in how to make it work.
Yeah, and that doesn't work when you're trying to construct these things.
Right. I mean, that all translates into money one way or the other.
That's true.
You know, whether they want it to go faster or whatever. Right. Exactly. But it absolutely could be done. I think the Imagineers that work at the company right now could absolutely do it if they were told to do it. But if no one tells them to do it and no one gives them the timeline or the money to do it, they're not going to do it.
Every time I'm going to go in that California tunnel, though, at Hollywood Studios, I'm going to feel like I should be landing in Toontown, like every single time.
That'll be a very fair point.
But I think it was
that or we're driving to Pasadena, one of the two.
Well, but I think to Jason's point, though, that's also, it is kind of a shame, not to bash the current generation of Imagineers, but once upon a time, the Imagineers would have cared enough to insist upon it.
It's not.
But it's also not insisting.
I don't want to throw them back.
Months ago too. Like, look at Toy Story Land. Like, it probably would have been coverage, and it probably would have been more theme, and probably would have been more. You're not standing out in the sun if it wasn't money. So it's like, hey, you got this amount of money. What do you want to do?
It's like creative people.
We can't worry about the transitions now. Well, maybe we can come back to it.
Creative people at Imagineering care.
Yes.
It should not be blamed on Imagineering. You blame Imagineers because within Imagineering there is management. There are non-creative people who consider themselves Imagineers because they work for Imagineering, even though they really shouldn't call themselves that. Because they're horrible. But there are a lot of people who really care. And then there's Parks and Resorts management, and there's WDI management, and all that restricts the creative people from doing stuff,
Yeah.
which I understand. You need limitations. There are absolute limitations, and I understand that. And I think there are times for limitations, and there are times to not have limitations. And if we can look at something we're talking about tonight, we talked a lot about the California Adventure expansion. If we can for a moment, where did they cut the budget in the California Adventure expansion? They cut the budget in Paradise Pier. So if Jason, if you pull up that concept art piece of Paradise Pier, the pretty one, the Victorian era one with the fun wheel, if you pull that up, you'll see what they originally wanted to do. We're not looking. I'll present it. You'll see this is what they wanted to do the first time. They wanted to, you see, it's much more grand. There are new facades. There are a lot of things, but they decided in the grand scheme of things, they were like, okay, maybe if we're going to cut stuff from this project, where are we going to cut? Let's cut from the pier. And in the end, when the 5 years was over, you looked at what they spent the money on. What they really spent the most money on was Cars Land, Buena Vista Street, World of Color. And those were the right decisions. So yes, you have a set amount of money you have to spend. There are ways to do that wisely. And that's what they did. I'm not saying the Tom Staggs years were absolutely the golden age of Imagineering. I just think Tom gave them a little more money to play with, but Tom would still tighten the belt, but it wasn't too tight, and I think they were allowed to do the things that still mattered. They cut from where they felt it was okay, and they could come back to later. Yeah, and now we don't do that. Now it's all about get any project down to the lowest price it can possibly be. Even if we're going to cut stores, we're going to cut stores from Toy Story Land. And I hate to tell you, there are several upcoming attractions where they're cutting stores because they think it's a waste of money. But
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's just, I have a question. I mean, this is almost nothing but everything to do with this. Is there been a time in Disney, especially domestically, history, where they're spending more money on construction at once? I mean, with different ongoing projects at once. You have the 50th anniversary, you have Tron, you got this whole Hollywood Studios spot too. You got Railway. You got
no, but there has never been a time with more big stuff approved and so many budget cuts to those big things.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it was too much too soon between Guardians.
I think they are making so much money, and it is proven at this point if they continue to spend it, they will make more money. So why on earth they feel the need to budget cut
cutting the budget
things already announced
that they know we're going to make money,
that they've already built in other places? They're cutting stuff out of Tron. How are you cutting Tron? It's barely anything to begin with. It's screens.
What are they cut? Wait, they're cutting Tron?
We can't get into this now. I can't say more, but they're cutting stuff from Tron. But
they don't get it.
It's now just called Ron.
I mean, it's clear that Bob Chapek just doesn't get it. Like Tom Staggs got it.
Yeah.
Bob Chapek doesn't get it. Yeah. Tom Staggs gave them a budget, but he gave them enough money to do what they needed to do. Yeah. Bob Chapek does not give them enough money to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I was going to say, I think Staggs comes from that old school mentality where Chapek just shows like Iger a number, like a sheet of paper with the number, like look how much we made and how much we're saving. Like just look at this piece of paper. Not
it is always the problem of people who come from consumer products.
I was going to say, where
who's ever come from consumer products to parks and resorts lacks any ability to run it correctly. Yeah. Staggs not having that background at least understood when he came into parks and resorts to let the right people tell him what to do. He let a lot of people who knew what they're doing in parks and resorts tell him what were the things to do. And they fixed California Adventure. To his credit, Pandora exceeded every last conception anyone had for that project because he let Joe Rohde do what he had to do, and he had the vision to see that there was something there.
And the numbers show it. It worked.
It worked. It absolutely worked. But now
it's still more popular than Toy Story Land. And Toy Story Land is open.
Well, that's because Toy Story Land is on fire. they budget cut shade in Central Florida.
Yeah.
You know, I thought for years and years and years, I thought that the worst thing that ever happened to Michael Eisner was when Frank Wells died. And I think the worst thing that ever happened to Bob Iger was when he fired Tom Staggs.
Yeah.
I still don't fully. So was it just because he was too far behind on timelines and over budget?
Things were behind and over budget, but I hate to break it to everybody.
But he did
everything has been behind still.
Right.
Yeah, it's not any better.
So where did Tom Staggs come from though? Because I know again, and
his mother.
I know.
He was the chief financial officer.
Yeah.
He was a finance guy.
But
he was with the company for a long enough time that he knew
they were sending him to parks and resorts to diversify his portfolio. In a lot of ways, that usually means they're grooming you. For whatever reason, they decided.
That's a horrifying thought if they're grooming Bob Chapek.
Absolutely.
No, not anymore. The Fox deal undoes all that, so don't worry about it. Bob Chapek ain't going up anywhere. So.
Can we just get rid of him, please, for the love?
Bob Chapek also not liked within Imagineering. Fun fact. So.
Can't imagine why if he's cutting their budget to everything.
Can't imagine why. Let's get back to Toy Story Mania, shall we? We've now entered the building.
Now, what are we talking about? What's that?
Well, because we're talking about the shrinking to the size of a toy thing and how it's garbage now. The queue features an elaborate array of toys to completely envelope guests as they wait in line. Features toys, child's artwork, and lots of colors. In the Hollywood Studios version of the attraction, the load and unload has been designed to look like Andy's bedroom. It's Andy's room from the films. It's pretty great. A great deal of research and playtesting was incorporated in the development of Toy Story Midway Mania. Imagineer Sue Bryan, the senior show producer and director, and her group were responsible for the creation of the game and to design the gameplay. In order to do this, Imagineer set up across the street from the main offices of the Imagineering. They had an area for people of all ages from 2 to 92 to test out the new games. Throughout the entire development of the ride, every 4 to 6 weeks, these testers were brought in to play the games and provide feedback to Imagineers, which was then taken to improve each game. One of the first challenges was getting a game that could work for players of all heights, so Imagineers went to a hardware store where they purchased some random pieces of hardware to design a shooter for the ride. It still created a problem with the very short not being able to reach the shooter and the very tall being cramped in. The solution was to attach the gun to the same mechanism that adjusted the height of the lap bar. So no matter how tall you were, the distance between the player and the gun was uniform and comfortable. This is ingenious design.
Yep.
I know, like, Toy Story Mania is not the apex of Imagineering. It is absolutely not. I think these vehicles are fantastic. I think they are amazing. I still think they're great. And I know it's fun to knock Toy Story Mania, but these are cool cars.
It is shocking that these cars have not been used in some other fashion beyond Toy Story Mania.
Well, they just keep building Toy Story Mania.
Right. I mean, it's a proven success in that realm, I suppose. But they are really, in the way these things whip around and stuff, they're really versatile little.
They're really like a miniature version of the EMV that's Dinosaur and Indiana Jones.
How?
Yeah, I mean, they don't go up and down on different.
Yeah, how are they like the dinosaur?
No, well, I mean, just the motion base.
But the fact that they
it's
can
not
go
a motion
360
base; they just rotate.
Yeah, the fact that they can rotate 360 is pretty impressive while moving and syncing up with the screens. I mean, I think there's 56 screens on this ride, all working at once on time. And even if there's a delay on the track up front, you can still play practice games. I mean, the thought and the time that went into this is ingenious. And it's a ride that I think is timeless, that you can go on 100 times and then you always want to ride.
I disagree with that, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
I'm talking about like the ride vehicle itself. You have a stable base that follows the track, and then you have the vehicle that sits on that base that has whatever range of motion they design it to have. Sure. And in this instance, it spins around 360. In Dinosaur, it moves up and down and on hydraulics. But it's the same type of concept where you have a stable base that follows the ride track, and then you have the ride vehicle sitting on top of that, and
which is basically also what they're doing for Guardians of the Galaxy, which we just saw the
absolutely yes.
Rollercoaster track base, a spinning vehicle.
And I mean,
on top of that,
it's right, and it's just like Gringotts too, Escape from Gringotts,
and Men in Black. I think It's fairly close.
Men in Black is simpler, but yeah, pretty similar.
Another challenge was ensuring that the games featured were easy enough for players to pick up, given that they were barely a minute for each game, so complex gameplay wasn't really an option. As an example, in the ring toss game, an early concept was to have a green alien involved, a green alien on platforms, but the aliens were quite small. And a problem very quickly was it was difficult to actually get the rings to go around any of the targets. So subsequently, the targets were enlarged in size and they added more targets when they redid the game the second time. But then new problems still came up. Since there were so many targets and rings could fire at a rate of 8 rings per second, very quickly the level would be swamped with rings, and it became quite confusing. So they went back to the drawing board and came up with a third idea for the level, where there were multi-level targets with far fewer targets. And if you ring a target on the first, if you didn't ring the target that you were aiming for on the upper level, it could fall down to the next level where it might hit a target there. In addition, if you successfully hit a target, the target would then go down and the ring go away, which solved the problem of rings just laying everywhere. But there was then a new problem. The game was too easy. The next version had increased the amount of targets, but it proved to be too confusing in terms of where to shoot, and the problem of too many rings bouncing around reared its ugly head once more. For the next version, Imagineers added some magnetism to the target, so when a ring shot near the target, it would be attracted and kind of assist the player into ringing it. This version was close but not quite perfect. A little more refining went into the level, and eventually you had the ring toss that we have today. So don't think that Disney just whipped up a couple of games and threw them out there. There was some rigorous testing and adjusting for all of these games, and I think it worked really well. They're all super fun. Yeah. I don't think Toy Story Mania is worth any sort of long wait, but if you told me like, hey, do you want to walk on Toy Story Mania? I'm never going to say no. I think the games are a ton of fun.
I think the downside for Toy Story Mania is the potential it has because of being screens. It's one of those few rides where I see screens and I go, oh, this can be updated constantly. This can be adjusted.
Well, and that's exactly what we said.
Right. The scores on each panel, even if you can't change where the plates are or whatever, the scores change out. So you might get really used to a sweet spot, but it's no longer 1,000 every time. It's 200 or something. There are things that can randomize, especially.
They can change them though. It's not like they have to change. They can change the plate locations too, and the scores, like you're saying, because that's all individual software just along the track.
Right. My point is the downside to it is they're not doing it. It's not.
They did it once.
I mean, I can specifically remember. I can remember 10 years ago when we talked about this on the podcast, and it was like, this is going to be so cool. They're going to come out with a Christmas version and a Halloween version.
And a Christmas version.
Yeah, right. Yes. But where is it?
Yeah.
Like, well, now that Toy Story Land's getting overlaid, I would expect by next year we should have the Christmas version.
You think?
I would like to think that.
It's high time for these games to be able to change out.
I think Toy Story 4, they're definitely going to change it again. So
yeah, but it should it should be so randomized,
right? It can be absolutely randomized, like the drop sequence on Tower.
Yes,
right. Like there should be 20 games, and you get 5 of them every time you ride, like the sequences in Star Tours. Right, like you can ride that 25 times and not have the exact same sequence, and that's the way this should be. And it's not.
I don't wonder though if that's slightly on purpose, because if you think about it, it's notorious on both coasts, and not so much anymore, but up until very recently, it was notorious for the long waits. And so I almost don't wonder if they didn't do that slightly on purpose. Because rewritability is one thing. Yeah. You add in that level of rewritability, and it's only going to up wait time.
I also know they really fight about show consistency too. So that sometimes that comes into play in this kind of stuff. But who knows? I think eventually. I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
They did it with Toy Story 3. They just had to concentrate on Toy Story Land. I think it would be cool if we saw the Christmas overlay this year.
I don't think it's going to be this year.
Maybe I could see that happening. But as far as 20 games and getting 5, I think that's still. maybe down the road.
Next year would be good. You want to pull people.
Announced it already. If it was going to happen, they would have announced it already.
If you want to pull people out of Star Wars next year,
next year's,
you do any way you can.
Yeah. Anyway, the look of the games was another challenge since the games aren't actually in any of the films. Someone had to invent how the games would look. Even though the Toy Story films came out in the 90s, in reality, Andy's bedroom and his toys are based on the 60s and 70s. So Imagineers decided to make the games also look like games visually from that time period. One game they particularly modeled one after was Snoopy and the Red Baron pop-up game. And they decided upon using cardboard flats with single-colored plastic with some stickers in each game. So all the games have the same look, so they all look like they're from the same playset. So in Florida, after Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It closed in August 2006, the building and the soundstage next to it, stages 2 and 3, were gutted and the facade of the building was ripped off. Work quietly went on for months on the mystery project until finally at a press conference on January 26, 2007, Toy Story Mania was announced as a ride where guests wear 3D glasses or carnival game goggles aboard spinning vehicles, the Toy Story trams, that travel through virtual environments based on classic Carnival Midway games. The sound stages and space across the street, formerly occupied by character meet and greets in a small outdoor shop, were completely walled off from guests to create Pixar Place, the first new area in the park since Sunset Boulevard opened back in 1994. The structures you see on the left side of the street were not there before. They were built attached to the back of the Great Movie Ride building, rest in peace. The space became home to a small shop, the Shootin Gallery meet and greet area. Hey kids, remember indoor meet and greets? And the small food stand called Hey Howdy Hey Takeaway. And for a short period as well, there was the Luxo Junior animatronic character and even Mr. Spell. The area was built to imitate the real Pixar animation studios in Emeryville, California, with those famous brown bricks and the Pixar Archway. It's not a perfect match to the real studio, and it wasn't meant to be. The area is littered with Toy Story references and characters as if they have invaded the studios. The attraction was simultaneously created for both Disney's Hollywood Studios, where it opened on May 31st, 2008, and California Adventure, which didn't quite make it and ended up opening on June 17th, 2008, about 2 weeks later. Even though they have different exteriors, queues, and loading areas, the attractions themselves are almost identical. Of course, on Pixar Pier, you get that beautiful Victorian facade, and the thing I really loved is in the exit in California, where there is this up at the top of the building, there's sort of this 1930s office area. There's a little desk and stuff, and then you can see that's where the parent would have been working. And then on the ground, the kid was given the Midway Mania playset, so there's an open little, as you return to human size, there's a little box on the ground that's open, and clearly the toys have been taken out to play with. And I thought that was just a really cute thing. It, of course, makes absolutely no sense on Pixar Pier now, but either way, I thought that was really cute. And the building was beautiful. It was a really, really beautiful building. Both coasts. I think they did a great job with them, both coasts.
I mean, they kept that up, too, even with the new Toy Story Land, where you see, Buzz Lightyear's box is empty up on top of ASS.
Yeah, just stuff like that. It's a little different, but yeah. I just like that one because it was, how are we going to fit this into the 30s pier? And they have this little 30s office, and the kid has opened the box clearly, and the toys are out. And I just thought it was really cute. But yes, also big stucco Buzz Lightyear box is very cute. Also, yes.
I agree. I do enjoy the little things, and this is what we talked about, like transitions, where you're transitioning back to the pier from the ride. It's not just transitioning in onto the ride; it's transitioning off, and I think that's the beauty of it. Yeah,
that Midway Mercantile sign on the pier too is beautiful. Really beautiful stained glass. Just great stuff they did for that project. So that's at the end of our story. In 2010, the attractions received Toy Story 3 updates. Only 5 mini games can be used at a time. So on May 21st, 2010, Bo Peep's Balloon Pop, the dart throwing game, was replaced with Rex and Trixie's Dino Darts. Characters from Toy Story 3 were also added into the practice round, and as well the point tally scenes, where sometimes you can encounter a bunch of different characters, as well as Spanish-speaking Buzz from the film. This was great. I thought this was awesome that the movie literally came out. You already had the characters in there. This was wonderful. This is what we wanted out of this attraction.
I don't think we've ever talked to any really about our relationships with the cannon handle on this ride. Do people like it? Do people hate it? I feel like there's how people hold that string. It depends on what everyone has a different technique. Is it do people? What are people's techniques?
Here's my issue with that.
I like this. I like this, and I'm excited.
Keep your shirt on, Pete.
I wish I had my toy one. They have a toy one they used to sell that I have somewhere. I don't know where it is. But in Japan, they sell one that's like the actual size of the real one.
Holy
it's
moly.
huge. I didn't have room in my luggage. I have to get it.
Oh.
It was too
Next
big.
time.
I already filled 2 bags. It was too late.
Here's the problem, I think, with that pull string shooter is that it worked well in Disney Quest because it wasn't a fire as rapidly as you can sort of game in Disney Quest.
Yeah.
So it was fine as a weapon pull string thing. In Toy Story, it's much more difficult to do a rapid fire when you're having to pull the string than it is like a trigger on Buzz Lightyear or something like that.
I
That's
prefer
true.
the string.
I
do
guess it
too,
depends on how strong your wrist and forearm muscles are,
Yeah,
and how
Oh,
it's
man.
true. I come off that ride aching. I gotta switch hands. I gotta go 2 hands.
It does after it can have the propensity to be painful.
If I can tell a quick story about my cousin. So we went in, when we went in, what was it? It was May of 08 during the soft openings. No one knew the thing was open, like for days. And we just kept going back and riding a bunch. So we rode 38 times before the ride officially opened because no one was there. Nobody knew the thing was open. So we just kept riding. So after a couple rides, I look at his hand and between his fingers, it's blistering. So he had, by the end of the trip, he had these huge blisters on his fingers. So every time we ride Toy Story Mania now, he brings tape with him, athletic tape.
That's amazing.
And literally tapes. This is absolutely true. I'm not making this up. Every time he tapes his fingers. It's a completely true story.
Oh
Wow.
my god.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I know who your cousin is when I see a guy walking around Hollywood Studios with tape around.
If you
his
see
fingers.
someone in the
His
queue
whole- his
while
hand
waiting in the
taped.
queue taping these 2 fingers, yeah.
It is
Oh
a
my
workout.
gosh.
You get like Tommy John on that ride. That 38 times.
Not in like one day. It was over the course of like 4 or 5 days, probably.
Still impressive.
I think. But
And then it
the
opened.
technique.
I came back when it was officially open, and I don't know what happened. There was
I was gonna say you had to wait a day and a half.
250 minutes, and I'm fighting people for fast passes. Remember, kids, when you had to run to fast pass machines?
Yeah.
Yes.
That
It's
was
not to
the
do it in
one.
California. It's not really a memory.
Well, you don't. No, you
Oh,
have max.
Pass,
Everybody has max pass, and they only added fast pass a couple months ago. Anyway,
Yeah, it
so
wasn't
it's
long
pretty
ago.
new, yeah. So yeah. Meanwhile, Tokyo Disney Sea, the Tokyo Disney Resort decided they wanted to have Toy Story Midway Mania, and they opened theirs on July 9th, 2012. And as always, they had to outdo us. And they opened theirs and you're probably wondering how
They
does
didn't have to. It just wasn't that hard.
Yeah, as always, you might ask how do you fit Toy Story Mania into Tokyo Disney Sea, the most amazingly themed park on earth? Well, they built it in the American waterfront section, specifically the New York area, and they built the Toyville Trolley Park, which is a nod to Coney Island and other amusement attractions of the time. Jason, I think we have an image or two of that. No,
Genius.
there should be of the big Woody entrance, the big Woody mouth.
Oh, you showed it earlier. Is it the pencil sketch with the big Woody mouth?
Well, that's the pencil sketch, but the real thing.
No, there's not one.
You still walk through a big Woody mouth?
I might have it. Hold on a second.
That is creepy.
They did the Woody mouth because that is a thing that really existed at Coney Island.
I see. There's a picture. Oh, this is not.
I'm trying to. I definitely sent you the picture.
I'm gonna try. Oh, that does look cool. It almost looks like Small World-esque with Woody in the middle.
I got it.
He found it. I knew I sent
Hang
it.
on. Let me get it.
Looks a lot like Mr. Potato Head.
So Toyville Trolley Park, it is absolutely gorgeous, especially at night. It's all popcorn lights. And there they actually like replace them every day if they burn out. It's nice. We have a daytime photo. The daytime photo is not as good, but we'll deal with the daytime photo.
The nighttime one is
it's really, if you watch the Walk in the Park, there you go. If you watch the Walk in the Park series we did on YouTube, if you watch the Disney Sea series, which you really should if you've never been, because it's no one ever really does a walking tour of that park. And so the one thing I was determined to do when I went was do like a full walking tour of just that park. We end at night in Toyville Trolley Park. It is gorgeous. I didn't ride Toy Story Mania. I felt no need to there because it's pandemonium. And why am I running for Toy Story Mania in a park that has Journey to the Center of the Earth and an awesome Tower of Terror and a million other amazing things? But it is a gorgeous, really gorgeous, cute area, and it fits perfectly into the 1920s New York. Yeah, and then, so Coney Island.
It looks amazing. No, I was going to say, like,
it does.
It's just, that's why I said it reminds me almost of like, just with the popcorn lighting and everything else, like almost like Small World over in California. But like, it just sets a mood, and like, oh my God, that tunnel where you walk.
Yeah, like that. Look at that queue in the back.
Yeah, it's
with all the arches.
Awesome.
It's
and then it
really
works
beautiful.
because you have like the little carnival signs off to the right. Same thing with the popcorn lights, and even the lamps like are just very. I don't know if anyone. I mean, I live in New York, so like are just so Coney Island-esque, and those benches that go around the planters. Yeah. It's very well done. The mouth is
trolley
still creeping me out a little bit. I mean, that's a little too Coney Island because it's so classy. And then you walk through this big, because it's like a freak show, like cause that's the Coney Island would be a freak show in there. Now it's Toy Story Mania, but I mean it's gorgeous. It's absolutely so well done. That mouth is killing me.
Yeah.
Although it's nice as we have the same complexion with those nice red cheeks.
Oh boy! So after you're ingested at Disney Sea, you can
they spit you back out.
Toy Story Mania. All right, so we move forward. We now go to 2015, and the announcement was made that Toy Story Land was coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios, roughly 11 acres in size and featuring a different attraction lineup from the other Toy Story lands around the world, including a new entrance for the expanded Toy Story Mania. And of course, the other attractions would eventually include Slinky Dog Dash and the alien swirling saucers. It is fun to read these old descriptions from the announcement. Slinky Dog themed family coaster and an attraction based around the Claw and the Little Green Aliens. Construction on the land began on April 3rd, 2016, and the land opened on June 30th, 2018. Fun fact about all this. So, 2016, in the middle, right after the announcement, they were already in the process of building the third track for Toy Story Mania in Florida. It was decided that they needed a third track. The lines were too crazy. And they opened that third track on May 24th, 2016, and then began the 2-year process of having to somehow reroute this whole queue to the back of the building to work for Toy Story Land. It was quite a project. I will say, I know I've knocked Toy Story Land a million ways. They did a really amazing job somehow keeping this thing running as often as they did and rerouting this queue. And I really like the new queue a lot.
This is a classic Disney where it looks great now and really good job. But when it was down to one track and there was only 4 rides running in that
it was rough for a couple weeks.
Yeah. It was rough for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it almost, if you didn't know that and you weren't on vacation those couple of weeks, it almost looks seamless. Remember, you go in that back entrance, all 3 tracks running. I mean, I will 4 or 5 times I've gone it since it's been Toy Story Land has been very quick wait, 15 minutes or less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the third track fixed everything. I mean, it had done that when it opened in 2016, and now that all 3 are running again in Toy Story Land, it's working. And the other thing is Toy Story Land's pulling people away from Mania a little bit too. Slinky's a good draw, and then there's people waiting for saucers. I mean, it's certainly more kid stuff, and people are willing to, the Toy Story Mania waits are 30 to 40 minutes generally, which is good.
And both turntables are working on saucers now too, right?
And they have been. It was just a couple of days. It rained one day into it, and it closed for a couple of days. Yeah. Meanwhile, almost simultaneously in California, announced at the 2017 D23 Expo, Pixar Pier would replace Paradise Pier, leading to a land change and minor modifications for Toy Story Midway Mania. The building was repainted in brighter colors and now resides in the Toy Story neighborhood, where it is will be joined by the Jesse's Critter Carousel in 2019. Otherwise, the neighborhood is made up of, they have the Senior Buzz Churros and the Poultry Palace.
Poultry Palace.
Holy for holy.
No.
Oh,
Jack
please
Jack's
stop.
Cookie Num Nums.
That's a different neighborhood.
Oh, that's a different neighborhood.
A fun
The
fact that no
neighborhood thing
one
gets me.
No one has really pointed this out all year, and I know I've said this several times, but Toy Story Mania is the first attraction in Disney Parks history to change lands in 2 parks, and it did it at the same time within a week of each other. 2 of them changed lands.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Like, imagine if Pirates of the Caribbean left Adventureland and New Orleans Square in the same week.
There would be
It's
riots.
insane. How does that happen? It's just a kind of a weird
Yeah.
fun fact. But that
Weren't they both? They were both put in during times of transition, and now we're also in a time of transition where it's also not too hard to retheme.
yes, we are in the as I'm calling it, the decal period.
Yeah.
The what?
The decal period, where everything is consisting of decal overlays.
Oh.
Imagineering is specializing in adhesive theming.
Well, 3M is the new sponsor of Spaceship Earth.
Oh, yeah, they just got that new large scale sticker printer. They gotta use it.
It's for the construction walls.
So yeah, that brings us to today. And Toy Story now resides in 2 of the most controversial lands ever built at the Disney parks, Paradise Pier and Toy Story Land. Very mixed reactions to
Pixar
both
Pier.
of these. What did I say?
Paradise
Pixar.
Pier.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
I said Paradise Pier. Pixar Pier. Not that Paradise Pier was perfect, but Pixar Pier is, it's a mess. Even my parents never been to Disneyland Resort. Their first trip in September. I think my mother goes, "What is this? Like, what is this area? Where are we?" It's like, it's a pier. It's like, well, what kind of pier? It's like, I don't know, modern pier. No idea what's going on. No idea. That's not good. The idea is you're supposed to be able to tell a story that everyone can understand. Yeah.
Or no one can understand.
Well, that's what they're doing now.
It almost
Toy
is
Story
too
Land.
general. I mean, we're not supposed to be talking. I mean, I don't think it's a show about Pixar Pier, but it almost is too general. It would almost be like going down like Disney Street, and you just saw like all the animated films were just like played a role down Disney Street.
But that can work in places like think about like Mickey's Toontown. Mickey's Toontown is a story and setting where you can put these different things together as long as they're cartoon characters,
Exactly.
and it works.
And
you
they
have
were
a
all
backstory.
But they were all cartoonish. They were all these. You were walking into cartoons and animated. It almost looked like everything was animated and drawn.
Yeah.
It looked like you were walking into Toontown from Who Framed Roger
But
Rabbit.
even like think about let's look at Mickey Avenue in Shanghai, their main street. You are blending Pixar characters and Disney characters and all different things, but it works.
But are we sure that works? Does
You
it?
have it does. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's done well. It's not done cheap, but it does it tastefully. Pixar Pier was not done tastefully. It was done cheaply. And that's the difference. I'm not saying a Pixar retheme could have never worked. The way it was done was done very stupid.
That's a valid point.
Also,
Like, I think,
complete, to be fair.
I don't think it's going to work, though, even complete. It's not going to work.
Oh, it's complete.
Is it?
I don't know that 2 more spinner rides are going to make me feel complete. I don't know if shipping Flix Flyers back to Italy
There's no
to be
Luxo lamp on top
rethemed,
of the
so
sign.
it is sent back from Italy to here, just so it kind of looks like it's from the movie Inside Out.
Wait.
is going to fix my
Pause.
feelings.
I need to pause for a second. You mean to tell me that they are
Oh,
shipping
God.
a spinner ride to and from Italy, but I can't have my Streetmosphere in Walt Disney World anymore?
No,
Correct.
you can't.
What the?
Somebody's got to drive those boats.
The same reason we got to buy escalators from China. And then they
Correct.
fall into the ocean and delay the 3rd parking structure at Disney
Well,
Springs.
that was the only way we got Shanghai. We had to buy their escalators.
But see, that's the thing with Shanghai. Is like when they care, even currently, they management can allow the creative people to do really fantastic things.
But
They
it
have
also,
to be allowed to do it.
Is the key to all of that though that they no longer feel that they need to get an audience here? Shanghai is this. It's a risk. It's something that they've got to,
Draw
gain
people
an
into.
audience. They got to draw people in.
I don't think but Shanghai was still designed under Stags.
That's true.
I think that the difference is Chapek doesn't see any of that. Chapek sees what's the least we can spend for the most return. That is the way they operate now. It is build more DVC hotels and more restaurants and less money and can we squeeze money out by simply retheming things and putting an IP on them.
The Decal Dynasty, the Decal Dictator.
I was going to say, too, I think that the big difference between overseas parks and ours too is that, like I said earlier, is that we have so much going on here, and there it's almost like they pick one project at a time. Like, okay, let's do this. Let's open up Toy Story Land expansion, and let's do it right.
Well, because they only have one park there to work.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And here we have 17 multi-$100 million projects going on at once, where we're getting we're going to turn out, let's call them 16 3.5-star attractions, and they're getting 2 5-star attractions.
It's fair.
Mm.
And we're getting monorails.
Are we getting a monorail? We're getting a Skyliner.
Oh boy,
we're getting some ropes and unair conditioned cars, and I'm excited about it.
We're getting an aerial sauna.
If things continue going the way they are, I'm going to need some ropes.
Tom's gonna buy that extra cable.
He's gonna buy that cable and wrap it around Bob Chapek's neck.
If they close another ride at Hollywood Studios, I'm gonna need some rope.
That would be impressive if they closed another ride. There, at one point, there was not enough to close.
They're building a giant generator / charging room for Bob Chapek.
So we've come to that point Back to the Future where we need to look towards the future. So what is the future of Toy Story Midway Mania? What do we think is going to happen with these going forward?
I think, like we had just said, they've got to change out some scenes, and I think, Toy Story 4, they'll change out scenes. I think what they need to do is have seasonal overlays.
See, but I think they almost can't embark on the seasonal overlays until 4 comes out because they need to include whatever.
No, right, that's fine. And that's fine.
Yeah. So I'm willing. I do not mind when the company makes sensible business decisions that even if they are things that hold off things that I would like to experience now. I feel I am a logical human being and I can understand from a business standpoint.
Sorry.
Pete, you really want to have this conversation right now?
I'm teasing.
I feel like I can at least reason with, I understand why you're doing this. You are holding off because you have another movie coming out. Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I am willing to let them go down that road.
I think they're going to have to do something. I think that randomization is the easiest way to post for, is the easiest way to get people to continue to show up and to try it out. I don't know if they're even worried about people continuing to show up. There's plenty of people. So that might not be an issue. I think this is... 20
years from now it could be, but they'll always have the option, which is the nice thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, too. We will see one of these Toy Story Manias turn into some other IP before.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think in the short-term future, we will see new scenes or new games or overlays. Let's call that the next 10 years to 15 years at least, because it'll still be relevant. But yeah, whatever that next IP is...
I think California for sure.
I was going to say, so when Pixar Pier fails, they'll trade it out for something.
Not fails, but people always love Toy Story. It's not going to matter.
Well,
it'll just be that fresh new thing, and also it's a genius ride system. Yeah. People love competition.
It is.
You sit next to somebody, you're in competition with them. They're going to have a good time.
Well, this gets right to what we were just talking about, right? If the Chapek method is spend as little as possible for the biggest impact, taking a ride and just reprogramming the screens and throwing decals on it for a new IP is cheaper than doing a different ride.
But sometimes that could be done well. Guardians of the Galaxy.
For sure.
And then sometimes it's done like trash in Credicoaster.
Yeah.
Was it that bad?
Incredicoaster is garbage.
Okay.
There are babies on sticks. Immobile character statues. It's not a dark ride.
But hey, they're lit up by floodlights at night.
Well, there you go.
Well,
and that's why I say Pixar, not trying to slight Toy Story or Toy Story Mania, even California, but I don't think Pixar Pier is going to last. Because apart from Toy Story Mania, which was already there, a lot of it is garbage.
I think I'd agree with you, and Pixar Pier will last as long as Bob Chapek lasts.
Right.
And when Bob Chapek's replacement comes in, which God help us can be sooner rather than later, Pixar Pier may go in a different direction once again.
I don't think Pixar Pier will last 10 years.
If Bob Chapek lasts 10 years, I'm going to need some rope.
But you bring up a good, I mean, we're talking about IPs that could go in really easily to Toy Story Mania. I mean, Incredibles is a perfect example of another Pixar property that could be.
I mean, also Pixar is going to continue to release a movie a year for
exactly
the rest of eternity. So, I mean, the IP that replaces Toy Story Mania is probably 10 years from even coming out, if anything. So,
and that's what I was saying. And also, I mean, Nathan, you said the rewritability. And I think that, yes, if you're a Florida local, you know exactly where to shoot. You've done it a million times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of get tired of it. But I think as someone who doesn't live there, and even people who are coming way less than I go down, you don't know where the targets are. You forget. Right. It's a fun ride. And you ride it with someone different, you're still going to try your hardest to try and beat the guy to your right or left, you know, or whether it's your dad or your mom or your brother or sister. So it's a ride that will, I think, that can stand the next 20 years, whether it changes IPs or not, just for that reason alone. I mean, but hopefully, I agree with you. If they mixed it up and made it random, it would be a home run, and then change out the scenes and overlays.
I'm curious what a Toy Story Mania would look like if they got rid of the screens and they did projection mapping like they're doing in Runaway Railway. I don't know what that looks like because I've not seen Runaway Railway in real life, and I'm tired of already saying Runaway Railway because it's the hardest thing to say.
So hard to say.
You better get used to saying Runaway Railway.
I'm just gonna call it R&R.
Yeah.
R&R.
Eminem's R&R. But yeah, I mean, I think there's potential for this type of ride in a different form. I just don't know what that looks like yet.
I just don't want it to be all the projection mapping everywhere. And I said this on Park Center too, is just that I love that we're able to do projection mapping, but I don't want it to go too far. The reason I like immersion is I like the actual surroundings around me. I don't want to just see projection mapping everywhere, and all of a sudden I'm,
the positive about Runaway Railway is it has a fair amount of animatronics, which is why I'm on board with Runaway Railway, at least so far. Midway Mania doesn't. I don't like these animatronic things that feel animatronic-less simply for budgetary reasons. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of attractions that feel that way. There's a lot of upcoming stuff that feels that way. I like Midway Mania, but this company, the not that there are plenty of good attractions without animatronics, but I feel like that's what makes a lot of the greater Disney attractions great, is the immersion is created for these characters who look like they're alive and actually there. That's why I'm such a big fan of Frozen Ever After, because I think the animatronics are fantastic.
Yeah.
That Olaf is unbelievable.
Everything.
I love that stuff. And for me, that does it more for me than anything in Toy Story Land. There's nothing in Toy Story Land that gives me that wow feeling. I always think about first time on different attractions. I didn't have a moment of wow in Toy Story Land. There were moments of, oh, that's cute, like Wheezy. I like Wheezy a lot. He's cute. But Frozen, I saw that Olaf turning that corner for the first time, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it was the most amazing thing. And I just, the current projects don't give me those wow moments, and we need to give people more of those wow moments. I'm not saying you need to build a ride with 80 animatronics like Pirates of the Caribbean again. I know they're way more expensive now. I understand that, but you have to. We can't go completely to projections.
I agree. I think, but also too, and I'm bringing up the same point in different ways, is just money. I think a lot of that technology and those animatronics and that full new level of immersion with characters that actually interact with you is going to be tried out and played with in Star Wars Land or Batuu, whatever you want to call it, Galaxy's Edge. Mm-hmm. So I think that is eating up a lot of these hey, let's put an animatronic in this ride. Well, we need that money for what's going on over here. Maybe we'll get to that in the future. I think that's eating that up, and we'll see maybe new things. We'll see the next thing that is, an animatronic wise. Before the animatronics was like, wow, we felt like we were here with chirping birds in a tiki room, with very simple animatronic, and now we're going to Batu. So what will be that next level? I'm curious to see. So we'll see.
Here's what needs to happen, and this kind of goes along with what you're saying, Pete, is when Imagineering gets the green light for something like Toy Story Land, and there's a budget attached to it, they need Bob Chapek to write them a check, and they need to take that check and put it in the bank, and then they can build Toy Story Land. Bob Chapek's not allowed to have money back. He's not allowed to budget cut lands after they've been designed and begun construction, because that always causes problems, and it results in a mess or something that's so subpar that no one is excited about it.
Or just don't tell us to begin with. That's the problem with budget cutting too, is that you build this excitement and hype around something, and then you take it back.
Well, that's Bob Chapek.
Exactly, but
Bob Chapek. Hey, where's the main street?
Yeah. Where's going to do that? Then don't take the money back.
They also let's remember the initial announcement for Toy Story Land. They literally compared it to Cars Land. They said it's going to be Cars Land, but with Toy Story. It was literally what Kathy Mangum said on the stage. Is that what we got?
No.
Hell no. And if someone wants to tell me Toy Story Land's as good as Cars Land, I will throw myself in front of a racer.
It's not even close. Honestly,
no, people said that to me when I was complaining.
Where's my Al's Toys Barn?
When I was complaining about Toy Story Land when it opened, there were several people who said things like that, and I was flabbergasted. Like I love Disney very much. It is everything in my life. And there are, trust me, I wouldn't go every day if I didn't love it and love things about it. And I know I've been more on the negative side the last year or so. That's because things are bad. Things are bad. That doesn't mean I still don't go there and have fun every day. It doesn't mean I still don't love it with every fiber of my being. I just don't want to see the place turned into garbage. That is, I would like to see the place continue to flourish. And it is. We are in this part of people are traveling. You are making a lot of money. You are building all this great stuff. You are on this tremendous roll. And now you are crashing very quickly and very hard. You are failing and you don't realize it. That's the problem they're having right now is when the parks fell apart in 2001, it also came at a point where tourism was down and the company overall was having a lot of problems. The problem at this moment in time right now is we do not have any of those signs showing. There is no signs of financial problems, although the last report wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. So you're starting to see it, but we haven't seen the company, the studio's doing great, the company overall is doing great, and none of the signs are there that were there in like 2001.
Two is that right now they're in a period where people will come no matter what you put out. There's no challenge to
that will change,
and it will change 100%. But right now I feel like he's sitting back because people are coming no matter what. Yeah, parks are. It's such a great time in Disney for Disney parks. I mean, besides the whole company, but for Disney parks because people are going to show up. There's so many new things that. People still haven't seen. Most people you talk to in the real world still haven't seen Pandora, let alone Toy Story Land. And then next, then it's going to be the Skyliner. Then it's going to be Batu. There's just so much coming down the pipe that people are just going to keep showing up and spending whatever they have to.
Some of the things internally are already deemed failures, though. It's not good that people already in the company know, like, the Skyliner's bad. Like, people have already decided, like, we can't stop this thing. It's happening, but it's not going to be good. There's a lot of stuff like that right now, which is the problem. The question is how soon will they see through this man's armor and give us somebody new?
Bleeding? Yeah.
And will somebody new be good? I mean, you don't know. It could be someone just as nonsensical as Bob is. So
I mean, at the very least, chairs are going to start shifting once Iger retires. If he ever does. I'm not sure if he's.
Yeah. Fox is going to change things.
Yes.
Fox is definitely going to change things.
Yeah. But anyway, we're getting way off topic.
Just a
But,
tad.
so do we think? I think Toy Story has to stay in Florida because the land is there.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah,
better or for worse.
I think that's a given.
The,
I mean,
the shadeless sandy
I mean,
planet of Andy's backyard.
I mean, in
I don't
theory, you
think
could flip the doors again. Maybe.
well,
And-
and
Worst
so-
case, you could always create shade in the future. That's not hard to do. It just
No,
would have a
shade-
little more money.
Should have been done the first time, but you could certainly add it.
Exactly, and you could also create a better transition into that area. I mean, they're definitely gonna do a better one over on the side of Batu. But coming in from the Pixar entrance, there's stuff you can do to transition.
Oh, that's
into that area
not
better.
going to last forever anyway. I mean,
Yeah. So, I mean, there are improvements that can be made down the road. It's not going anywhere, especially in terms of just Toy Story Mania itself. Like we talked about, this is a ride that's staying there for, we can all agree, at least 15 to 25 years.
Yeah.
Whether it's
And-
Toy Story
and-
or not.
I think in California, I mean, the precedent has already been set that a cloned attraction has been rethemed in California and untouched in Florida. So it certainly is the case that Toy Story can be rethemed in California while remaining Toy Story in Florida.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. One final question I have for everybody. High score.
I don't think I've done better than the cat.
I've gotten.
I
What
forget
is-
what is the high score? Like, what's like the high score?
The
What's it-
highest I think
Well,
I've seen
Larry-
on a board is like 500 and something.
I was gonna say, I think it's like a $500,000,
Yeah.
right?
That's not
Yeah.
the highest you can get, but that's the
definitely
highest
high.
I've ever
highest.
seen.
Yeah.
I want to. Mine is somewhere in the ballpark of like 75 to 80. I think. I'm not great at this attraction.
I want to say I've hit like 200,000.
I was gonna say, I think I just over 200K was, I think my math.
I hate all of you.
Yeah, it's always been the cat. That's
Work on your
that's-
arms.
What is the cat?
I don't
It
know. It's the
doesn't-
prize. It's like the third down. There's bear is top, deer, cat, and I don't know what else is below that. Turtle is like the worst, I think.
I'm at
Something like
318.
Humble brag. Humble brag.
It's not though. There's people hitting 550,000. I'm not even close to that.
I definitely hate all of you right now.
I should be much higher for how often I go.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised.
You
I
should
really
really
like
just
that.
follow
I
it.
would've-
Right,
that was
yeah.
just me.
I have a sad story to share. We'll end on this note. Here's a Tom Corliss fun fact for everybody. I have not been in a relationship in my life where I have not had a fight with my significant other over Toy Story Midway Mania.
What? What are one of these fights about?
Various things. With one person, it was you shot targets on my side. With
supposed to.
another person, I apparently was yelling too many instructions. I think actually two people, it was different instructions. It's always something. Yeah. So
I can attest to
I have
that.
not been in a relationship in
I
my
mean-
life where I have not fought with my significant other. Over
I mean,
Toy
when
Story.
I ride with you, you're always yelling at me about not hitting the aliens. In the rocket
that's
ship.
correct.
When
Yeah.
I ride with you, you
yeah.
hold my hand.
It was I rode with you, right? Pete,
me?
did I ride with you?
I don't think you were you weren't with me. No.
No.
Yeah, I always get yelled at when I ride with you. So somehow,
Well,
that,
I expect
that
better now.
story
You've rode
doesn't-
with me many times.
well, yeah.
Well,
You are-
you would,
You still don't know how to shoot the meteorite. You're still just sitting there, shooting the little dinosaur walking slow. The meteorite's just sitting there.
from the perspective of Tom's significant other or anybody else that has to ride with somebody like that, I can attest to that. I won't ride with my husband anymore. I won't. I absolutely will not. We don't ride
Yeah.
together. And if we do, we are not side by side.
So Midway Mania is the IKEA of Disney things. for couples.
Apparently so.
Wow. Anyway,
So for any women out there who want to be with Tom, just sit there and say, "Thanks for all the advice, honey. This is a great ride."
no, it's not that easy. I assure you. I'm going to get yelled at probably after this segment.
as well, you should.
Anyway, any final thoughts on Toy Story Midway Mania?
Not really, but I want to sleep well knowing you're gonna get yelled at. So
Oh, it's not by Disney.
I just want to give a nod to the original Imagineers who put this all together because it is a ride between the vehicles and the technology and putting it all together back in 2008. It really came out to be a success. I mean, it's 10 years later, and we all can all agree it's going to last at least another 15, 20.
People love it. I love it too. I know it's real fun to knock it, but I really love Toy Story Mania. I do not want to wait hours for it, but I love Toy Story.
Yeah, it's a 15-minute or less for me. Or I mean, if you're never there, 30 minutes or less is still appropriate. Now that there's 3 tracks, but it's a great ride.
For how quick this thing got constructed, it's incredible that it has the legs and the technical backing to support what it needs to do. So for just the sheer speed of how quick this thing got put together, I'm impressed that it's lasted this long and with I would say no one considers this a ride that breaks down a bunch or anything. So
no,
it's good.
And I think it exceeded all expectations. I don't think they thought in their wildest dreams that they were going to have 300-minute waits. I don't think anyone thought for a moment that was going to happen.
Clearly not. I mean, look at Florida. It took them how long to add the 3rd track?
Well, because I don't knock them for that. I think they were thrown for a loop. No. They had no idea.
Right.
And I mean, it has pretty good.
Though.
It has pretty good capacity.
Or they would have,
It has tremendous capacity. It has the highest capacity in that park, I'm pretty sure. It does over 2,000 people an hour.
No.
Star Tours.
No, it doesn't. Star Tours is lower capacity.
3,000, over 3,000 an hour.
Disagree. I'm a hard disagree. Someone look
Star
it up in the
Tours.
Toy Story Midway Mania with 3 tracks definitely holds more than Star Tours.
6 simulators, 40 passengers, 5 minutes.
I'm looking
and
it up
a
right
partridge in a pear tree.
Star Tours.
Indiana Jones stunt show.
That's a show. Get out of here.
All right.
I also think
operational hourly ride capacity. Star Tours 1620. Toy Story with
Star
3
Tours
tracks.
what?
This is just, I don't know if this is it says operational hourly ride capacity. Toy Story Mania with 3 tracks, 2160 per hour. Star Tours 1620 per hour.
No way.
That's what
Not
it says
even
here.
close.
That may be Disneyland's, but not.
Disneyland has 4 simulators. Yeah. Well, it could be.
This is saying Hollywood Studios, so it's not.
No, that's wrong. That is incredibly wrong. We sit here and do the math right now. It's real easy to figure out.
I just think with the 3 tracks, the capacity has to be. I mean, it just goes so much faster. It's also 5. It's also constantly going 5. It's only a 5 or 6 minute ride, constantly going. Star Tours is a production.
40 people. You can only put 8 people in a train on Toy Story.
Hey, but how many do you have going at once?
Well, you wouldn't have 300-minute waits if it was that fast.
Right.
Well, that's also hasn't been a 300-minute wait since the 3 tracks.
The 3rd track does not add a lot of capacity. The 3rd track loads.
I bet you it adds 33% more capacity.
The 3rd track loads only 8 people, and I think their dispatch time is probably 15 to 30 seconds.
I don't know. I'm gonna be there next week. I'm gonna go talk to the cast.
Ask someone run the attraction. I'm sure they'll tell you.
I'm very curious.
I think their theoretical hourly now is like 16 something because it used to be like just over 1,000. I think it's like 1,600 now, something like that.
All right.
No, I don't.
I won't even give the name of this website because clearly it's wrong.
You know the one thing we haven't.
Why are you quoting it?
You know the one thing we haven't really mentioned here at the end is that maybe the reason this is such a successful ride is because of the competition element. It's not something that is in any other ride that I can think of.
Except Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, and that's
true.
Pretty popular.
But this one actually gives you a rank, and there's a leaderboard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's far, far better.
It was very well thought out, clearly by some people who like to play games. They clearly thought like, here we're going to give it a lot of rewritability. We're going to hide a lot of hidden targets and stuff. We're going to do scoreboards. We're going to post the best score of the month and the day and the hour. Like they very much thought they put themselves in the shoes of someone who likes to play competitive games, and it checks all of the boxes. Yeah. Well, with that is going to do it. That completes our journey. You can take it away, McFly.
Whoosh.
That's how the segment ends. And then usually there's some music.
Yeah, well, not today.
I like Jason
no.
sound effect.
You put that in post.